Hey everyone, welcome to my another live episode of Inspire TV where we find solutions in our situation. And today in my hot seat I have Abby Bordner from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and she is the founder of relationship-based parenting. And a lot of you guys don't even know that you have that support out there. And I love interviewing her today as I'm a single mom and a lot of the challenges that come up with parenting Abby's going to be able to answer for you today. So if you're a parent today or even thinking about becoming a parent, sit tight and Abby's going to shed some great awareness for you today. So welcome to our show, Abby. How are you?
Thanks, Carrie. I'm doing great. Thanks. I'm excited to be here, and I totally understand that mutual experience we have as moms. And I think our daughters are really close in age. My daughter's 11, right? Shyla is too.
Yep, she'll be
Yeah.
11 in March. So yes,
Okay.
very
Okay.
close.
Great.
Very
Yeah. Yeah. It's an amazing journey, isn't it?
yes. From conception on, it doesn't start. It starts really young.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, I was always curious, and you've been an entrepreneur for 12 years, but where in your life, how did you get to this platform of actually helping parents and giving them hope? And in fact, I like to joke and call Abby kind of the parent whisperers. She's out there helping you with your kids. So tell us your journey. How did you get to this place?
Well, my oldest child is 15, and I had been working in women's health, mainly in the medical setting, and I was at an OBGYN office as her assistant, and I felt like my professional life has always kind of paralleled my personal life, like I work in the capacity of what I'm doing in my personal life. So within a few years of working with her as an OBGYN, I became pregnant with my son, and from that point on, I felt like I was part of this new club that I'd never been in before, and I could look at other moms and children, and I felt like we had an understanding of each other, even if we didn't have anything else in common. There was this just mutual respect and understanding, and so I felt like going through the process of pregnancy and birth was one of the most life-changing things I've gone through personally. And my work in the OBGYN office was connecting and educating pregnant women. And so my early career then expanded into pregnancy education and childbirth preparation. So that was my first venture into entrepreneurship. I started my own business as a childbirth educator and doula. I assisted women in the birth process and educating them, getting them ready, and then also the postpartum time with breastfeeding and adjusting to being a parent. So after I had my son, I started to branch into this field of pregnancy support, birth support, and as my son grew, and 4 years after he was born, I had my daughter. I started parent support and found that there was so many questions people had, and a lot of the women I had served as a doula and I was their support for labor and birth, they came back to me because they knew and trusted me and said, okay, now I have a toddler and tell me about what to expect in this phase. And the first birth I went to, that baby is now 14 years old. So I've traveled with a lot of families through the journey. My first experience as an entrepreneur was serving my local community. It was all face-to-face support, teaching classes, one-on-one support, and home visiting. And then 3 years ago, I really wanted to expand my audience, and I fortunately got the support to launch an online business called Relationship-Based Parenting. And this was an opportunity for me to finally write a blog about my work and then serve families through online classes and personal support one-on-one. And this has been a great way to expand because now I have clients all over the United States, and I have one in Canada, one in Australia, and so the amazing internet has given me global access and found that parents all over the world really have the same questions, the same struggles, that need the same level of support.
Oh, that's so true. And we all have those mommy fears that show up. I love that you start really literally with pregnancy and you published a journal for childhood preparation. And I was in that space too, 10, 11 years ago, reading every book I could find as soon as you find out you're pregnant, and it's a scary feeling. So first let's back up for a minute just to kind of get really clear for our audience. What's a doula? Explain that just for those that don't know.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it was relatively new field that when I started, and now it's more widely known. You'll find on childbirth websites and in classes, people will start talking about doula support. And a doula is similar to a midwife, but also different. A doula is an emotional and physical support person for labor and birth. A midwife also takes on the role as the medical provider. So as a doula, you're a non-medical support person, and I usually work along with midwives or doctors who are the medical provider. But I meet with clients ahead of time, and I do talk about their fears, their expectations, their concerns about the birth, how they envision my support being helpful, and I build a trusting relationship so that when she goes into labor, I'm usually the first person they call, and we go over some of our pain coping techniques we've reviewed. I go to the home and work with a couple in early labor while they're still home before they get to the hospital, and just help reduce anxiety, get some rhythm going that helps mom feel more relaxed and comfortable. And then I also show her partner, family members who might be there with her, oh, let's try this and see if this helps her feel better, maybe relieves the back pain. And then a doula stays with her client in the hospital setting as well. So if a mom is planning a hospital birth, we'll leave the house and get to the hospital, mid-active labor, so that she gets there, gets settled, and continues with some of these pain coping techniques so that she has that extra level of support. And really the goal is to create a positive birth experience. And there's no promises that it'll be all natural or unmedicated or it won't turn to a C-section. But there's still a way to have that feel like a positive experience with good support, good information, and advocacy. So the years I've worked as a doula, that has been my primary goal. And now I actually work to train students to become doulas. So I don't myself personally go to births much anymore, but I work for an organization that provides a professional certification for doulas.
That paints the picture so well. And you know me and my silliness. I'm thinking of all the marriages a doula could save. Take all the pressure off the dad, because I could have used one, and you think, so much fighting goes on with that last that last trimester of pregnancy, and you expect the husband to just step up and the father to be there, and he doesn't know what he's doing either. He's like, I'm just as clueless. I saw my wife go from this to this, and I don't know what's going on.
Exactly. And it's actually somewhat unusual culturally to have men in the labor and birth room, and that's true for about the last 20 years in our Western culture. And if you talk to your mom or your grandmother, their husbands were not in the labor room with them. And actually around the world, it's usually the aunties and the mothers and the female support people, because we're much more inclined to be able to rub your back and wipe your brow and say, okay, girl, you can do this. And for dads, it's stressful. It's hard to see his wife going through that and not feel like he can really do anything to fix it.
Right, I agree. In fact, I'm one of 5 kids, and I'm number 4 out of 5. And I was the first kid he got to see in the 70s. So as you say that, it's kind of funny. And he didn't do so good. He's like, they pulled a needle out this long, and I had to put my head between my knees. I wasn't feeling so good. They don't need 2 patients with dad, passing out on the floor.
Right, I've seen that. And dads are often ones that say, I'm so glad we had a doula, because she helped remind me what I needed to do and also gave me a break sometimes. It's hard to expect dads are going to know what to do for 15 hours in a row, or how to be an advocate in the hospital and ask the right questions and make sure that you have all the information. It's a lot of expectation for dads, so they appreciate the extra support as well.
Absolutely. So I see doula as a pregnancy and delivery coach, literally
Right.
That on the sidelines.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, exactly.
That's so interesting. That's so nice. I'm going to have to definitely start recommending that for my friends that are going through this right now, the pregnancy and getting pregnant and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Very smart. Thank you for enlightening us on that. That's huge. So you published a journal on childhood preparation. How can we, first and foremost, how can we even get access to that? And tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, the journal is called Creating Stillness, a journal for childbirth preparation. It's available on my website, abbybordner.com. And I have some people that use the journal in childbirth education classes. So there's also a bulk discount for people who buy 10 or more, because you can also have it as a keepsake or gift for pregnant women. And if you happen to be a service provider in some capacity where you see a lot of pregnant women, maybe a prenatal yoga teacher or a childbirth educator or even a doula, you could use the journal as an opportunity for women to start exploring their inner world about childbirth. I think in our Western culture, we think, oh, if I read every book written, and if I go on the internet and research it and go to classes and take good notes, then I'll be ready to give birth, right? But the truth is, it's really an inward journey, and there's so many levels of our own fear and expectation of our personal ability that can interfere with our birth experience. So the journal itself is meant to be a quiet, reflective process for pregnant women as they face the experience of birth. We often have fear and expectation based on what we've heard other people tell us, maybe what your mom told you, what your other friends have gone through. And so this is a way for you to just take quiet time to do some writing. In the journal, there's prompts that will ask you to write about certain things. There's also skill pages that are opportunities to create stillness based in yoga, meditation, and mindfulness, ways to just manage stress. I think one of the hardest parts about preparing for birth is that there's so many unknowns. There's so many things you can't plan ahead for. You don't know even what day you're going to go into labor or how long it'll take and if everything will be okay. So we have to manage a lot of uncertainty as we prepare for birth, and that can be very stressful for all of us who like to be in control and like to be able to put in our day timer when and what's going to happen, and so it's skills that will be useful also as a parent to a young child, because I almost in parentheses wrote it's a journal for childbirth preparation and for life, because it's really about what kind of things can you control and what could you be doing today to help improve outcomes on things like your own flexibility and your own information that you have. But then other things that you can't control, how do you still find a peaceful place through your breath, through your posture, through movement, and then those all become useful while you're in labor. And so it's kind of it's a self-help book, I think, so that you start to build the skills of planning ahead, but also having enough flexibility that you can manage what comes up for you in labor.
I love that. Where were you 12 years ago?
I know.
Because, of course, I read the What to Expect When You're Expecting, and all it does is give you kind of the scientific background of what's going on in your body, why you feel weird, what's going on in your brain, and it's not that emotional stuff that moms need, and I love that you touch base on all of that. It's not not something to, it's like, oh, we've been giving birth for generations, suck it up and make it happen, like, you big baby, why are you afraid,
Yeah.
So that part, I love that you shed the fears, because all moms have them, especially with the first. I don't think it ever goes away. Each pregnancy,
right,
that stuff shows up, because anything can happen.
Well, and it comes up again in a subsequent pregnancy if you had a difficult experience or you didn't feel fully prepared or supported in your first birth, then you carry that with you the next time you get pregnant, and then your fears might even be greater that would happen again, or there's really an opportunity, I think, with every pregnancy, if you're somebody who has more than one child, to revisit, okay, what's coming up for me now? And sometimes the second or third pregnancy is more about the other kids or your marriage, things that you may have given birth before, but there's a new set of circumstances with each pregnancy.
And one thing, and I'm sure you believe this too, is the emotions the mother feels does the infant, the baby feels too, and a lot of it can shape their patterns and beliefs. And we kind of are shaped in there, literally in the womb, emotionally. And can have some challenges. If a mom's had a really stressful lifestyle during, obviously, the 9 months of pregnancy, it can kind of show up later. And I've worked with people and individuals, on their own versions of beliefs and emotions. It's like, where's this coming from? This is before birth kind of stuff. What was your mom going through? And unfortunately, we can't always control traumatic instances, or your spouse dies when you're pregnant, all that other deep, dark, scary stuff, but it does show up. So I love that you go into getting the mom more centered, more calm, feeling good about herself, about the pregnancy, and then all the way to birth. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, there's a whole field called perinatal psychology that talks about that connection between a mom and her baby and her emotional experiences during pregnancy and how that affects the serotonin and the peptides of the brain as it develops in the newborn. And not to put blame on moms for, yet another thing that we'll take the blame for, but it's an important time to be aware of how well you're taking care of yourself. And the journal itself is based in finding good a practice of self-care that will continue as you have your baby and become a mom, and hopefully that becomes a seed that is planted, that self-care is not a luxury that you get to when you have extra time.
Right.
It's really a necessity.
Exactly. I love that you talk about that. It's big for me. So 3 years ago, you started a relationship-based parenting group, and you did your business online. You took it from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and you broadened your horizons, which led you to a client all the way in Australia, and that's so cool. And I love that you touched base on that, because obviously the internet's my best friend. So technology has made it so much easier to help more people. So tell us more about, kind of what led you to taking that step, because that's a big one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you and I can relate on this, Carrie. You talk about it too, that I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I work harder for myself than I ever have for a boss. And when I'm alive with creative vision, I just feel like I'm on fire with energy and excitement. And I really had always wanted to be a writer, and there were many years I thought, I want to write a book, but it's so overwhelming. I don't think I can even start. And so I got the inspiration 3 years ago to expand my audience to online so that I could reach more people. And Santa Fe is a pretty small town, and I did a lot of marketing and promotion for my local services. But at one point, I just felt like I would love to be reaching more people and have some cousins and relatives and friends in other parts of the country, and they were always excited to hear what I was up to. And so I had enough support to feel like, oh, I could take this step. And it was great for me because I do a weekly blog from my website, relationshipbasedparenting.com, and get a lot of feedback about that. They're short blogs that people say they're so convenient because you can read it in 5 or 6 minutes, and so you don't have to have a lot of time. And for me, taking that step into writing has been so helpful because I'm not writing a book, but I'm writing a blog every week, and it's felt so like taking a bite off of something I wanted to accomplish, and being able to do that weekly, and that's been a big success for me. And I learned, I entered a coaching program for launching and developing an online business, and that was so helpful because that first year in business I was doing things I had never done before, and I certainly would never have come up with those ideas on my own. But did my first summit, and by the end of my first year had a database list of about 3,000 people that were pretty actively engaged in opening my emails and corresponding with me. And so I launched my first program where I worked one-on-one with families, and it's just been so rewarding, and I feel successful having been able to reach outside my local community in that way.
I love that because, again, like I mentioned in the beginning, many parents out there don't realize this kind of support is there. You don't have to, go to lunch with your girlfriends and talk about your kids and hope that you're not the only mother that's pulling her hair out every day. So, just for that support, that the support is out there, and Abby's got this beautiful light to share with you and shine that. Tell us a little bit more about the program. Like, what kind of support do you offer these moms and dads and people that get to come with you? Kind of share a little bit more on what that looks like to work with you intimately.
Yeah, sure. I developed my program with an education component and then a personal one-on-one support. So I am a teacher at heart. I love teaching groups of people, and I have some great curriculum on child development, emotional resiliency, self-esteem, discipline, a lot of the common topics, things I've written about in my blog, but also the baseline of information. In relationship-based parenting, the general principle is that your relationship with your child is your best teaching tool for healthy emotional regulation, healthy social interactions, and through this connection, your child really develops all the social and emotional skills that he or she needs to navigate school and learning and extracurricular activities. So the relationship itself is where parents can have the biggest impact on the success for their child. And so many indicators now are showing that successful people aren't just intelligent with a high IQ, they're people who can manage failures and try again and have self-esteem to take risks and emotional control so they understand their emotions and then communicate well and get their needs met. So there's all these subtle, soft markers for success, and parents have the biggest impact to build those qualities with their kids. So one aspect of working with me is getting a really good education about what are these important aspects that have the most impact in your child's whole life. That as a parent, in the years you parent your child, you have the ability to impact the rest of their life, for better or worse, right? Some of us come from homes where, we're still dealing with maybe some challenges we had as growing up. But then, so in addition to the education, I do the one-on-one support where each family I work on, what are your particular struggles? What are your challenges with your child? Well, let's try this, or what about this? And we incorporate the educational information and say, okay, well, what does that really look like when my child's having a temper tantrum, or my son is being disrespectful and rude to me, or my teenager isn't cooperating? So we work with strategies to incorporate the information so that it becomes really practical help for parents.
I love that. You really do work from, toddler to teenager and then some, and really a conception, if you're working on that even to getting your mommy ready. What are the challenges that you see most commonly with your clients?
That's a good question. There are some overarching themes that come up with every family I work with. And, I would say that parents struggle with managing their own emotions. I talk about teaching our kids to manage and understand and communicate about their emotions as one of our jobs as a parent and one of those key indicators for success. But often as parents, we're flying off the handle, we're yelling, we're grabbing our kids to get them out the door. And so often there's the focus on raising healthy children, but what I really do is help parents learn the skills to make them more just a healthier outlook on life. So I work on how do you notice when you're getting irritated and angry at your kids? What do you do in those moments so that you're still being resourceful and you're not damaging your relationship with your kids? That a lot of kind of traditional punishment and discipline, it erodes the relationship. It actually has a negative impact on that key tool of being in a healthy relationship. So discipline is a common theme, punishment, talking about really with discipline, what we're trying to do as parents is impart our values, right? When we have to discipline our kids, it's when they've disrespected some value that we hold close to our heart, and it might be we treat each other with respect, or we don't damage property, or we do what we're told, those kind of things. And so as parents, if you look at instead, what value do I need to be communicating here with my kids, rather than how should I punish them in a way that they'll never do this again, there's some subtleties about how to manage anger and discipline with kids that parents are really curious about. And it's great because once they start implementing some of the strategies we work on, they start to see much better results. Their kids trust them, they respect them, and they're more likely to behave in the way that you want them to. Another common theme I mentioned a little bit earlier is that parents are trying to overcome their own childhood, that you think, I want to be a better mom than my mom was, or I want my home to feel more loving and safe than my home did as a child. And so a lot of parents I work with are thinking, I want to parent really differently than my parents did, but I don't know exactly how. And often in stressful, heated moments, we just revert to kind of what we know. And then you think, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. So how do you control yourself and really implement more positive reactions and responses to your kids? Another common challenge is two parents in the same house don't agree on parenting. So I might be consulting with a mom who says, "Oh, my husband thinks I'm a total softie, and I never put my foot down with the kids, and he thinks we need to teach them a lesson." And so how do my husband and I parent together in a way that doesn't destroy our marriage, right? and parenting is one of the number one challenges for marriage. And so I also work with couples about how can you respect each other as two unique parents, but at least know and trust that you're both on the same page about what your goals are for your kids. Those are a
See,
few of the challenges.
you are saving saving marriages out there, all the way from the the birthing room to fighting
Right.
about disciplinary actions.
Yeah, yeah.
You're saving the home life is what it really is. It's you're creating peace and harmony. I love that. I love that you mentioned that because I'm a single mom, so me and my daughter, sometimes I have my moments too, and I love that you mentioned what we're going through. Because that's usually the pattern is you had a hard day, you snap at your kids, or you're stressed out, and then everybody's running late. Then your ugly mom side comes out, and then we feel guilty for the rest of the day because you're like, oh, I can't believe I snapped at her. She's gonna have a bad day at school. So I love that you bring this up, which is so important to focus on us, just like when we're pregnant in the beginning stages, focusing on us. And you created a group called Modern Motherhood, and you kind of did a spin-off because I'm sure you saw it in your own practice, I need to get to the root of the problem. It could be mom, it could be mommy, and her feeling jaded and so on. And I've had my moments where I'm triggered by something emotional, and I snap at my daughter, and then there's tears, and then there's I'm sorry, I love you, and all that drama that shows up. But share a little bit about focusing on just mom and what's that shown, obviously in the parenting status here.
Yeah, yeah. So about a year after I started relationship-based parenting, I launched into kind of a branch of my business called Modern Motherhood, and it was something I had considered for a long time. And for me personally, when my kids were both under 5 years old, now in reflection, I see I really suffered from depression during those years. And I felt so guilty because these were supposed to be the best years of my life, right? I shouldn't have felt sad. I should feel as happy as I've ever felt. And there were a lot of days I just felt like I was going through the motions, that I sometimes had good days, sometimes had bad days. Some days I was bored and uninterested. Other days I could muster up more creativity and really be there for my kids. And I had wanted nothing more than to be a mom for a lot of my life. And I had some fertility obstacles, if you will. And so I had to be very conscious about planning my pregnancies. And so I also felt like, this is everything you've ever wanted. Why can't you just be happy with this? And I went through this mental dialogue about, I'm ashamed of the way I feel. I'm a bad mom. Maybe I could be happier somewhere else. I really was questioning, where could I find more happiness? Because I look at pictures of myself during those years, and I see that I was carrying this stress and this expectation that I wasn't meeting. And so once I could really reflect on that time, I started to make some universal observations about mothers and women, and started talking to people. And it turns out almost everyone I talked to knew what I was talking about. And I called it mean girls in my head. I said, you know those thoughts that come into your head that tell you you're a bad person, you're selfish, you're unlovable. And I thought, is this my own experience? But, women from every generation, my mom who's in her 70s, young women, they all said, oh, I know what you're talking about. You don't even have to explain that. So I realized, wow, this is a really concept that people can understand, and that maybe they need more support in. And so with Modern Motherhood, I developed this program of really self-care as a necessity for women. And what I found when I started to move into more self-care is that every aspect of my life became more meaningful. I used to think, well, if I take care of myself, then I'm neglecting my kids, or then I'm doing, I'm taking away from, and I don't want to take away from what everyone else needs from me. But I was a better mom, I was a better partner, I felt good more consistently, and that journey for me was learning spiritual concepts, meditation, yoga, even just self-reflection and reading and journaling, those kind of things. So I put together a program for women where it's called Your Journey to Joy and Balance in Life. And it was directed at moms. Most of my clients have been moms. And this has been great because there's a subgroup of my clients that now are participating in this. And with one client, we're working on helping her identify her move back into the professional life after being a stay-at-home mom for 5 years. And another mom, we're exploring some interest in self-care for her so that she can balance that and integrate that into her life as a mom and a professional. And so it's so satisfying. It's really great. And the feedback has been really good that moms don't have that kind of unique one-on-one support to build a life that really it looks like the full balance of all the aspects of who we are to so many people in our life, and feel joyful and peaceful about it.
Mm-hmm. I know. Guilt, I like that you talked about guilt because that literally starts at conception. I think it never goes away as a mom.
Yeah.
By all means, it does.
Yeah.
I remember, I think I learned the hard way with the self-care and realizing how much nicer I was when I actually took some time for myself. I think it was with, I was still married and I finally went and got my nails done or something I did just to pamper myself, and how much loving I felt when I came home, to everyone in the household, and I was happy to see my baby girl, and it was just like, I need to do that again. That was really good. Something's different here. Like, I don't feel like I'm on empty. And
Right.
we try to run around solving all the world's problems and forget about our own. So
Yeah.
how do we manage the guilt? I mean, that's probably the biggest thing I think with all moms I've ever worked with and any parents, is the guilt factor. Like, should I really be having this much fun? They're at home with a sitter they don't really like. How do we work around the guilt?
Yeah, that's a good question. And one of the concepts in modern motherhood is getting back to my best self. And so part of the first few classes is we do exercises to really identify who is my best self. And that is really the essence of who we are and how we want to be in the world. And I describe it as you're freely able to give love and receive love and find deep contentment in each moment. Even just sitting on the floor pushing trucks around with your baby boy, perhaps, or snuggling up with your daughter while you watch TV together. Your best self is the person in you that offers from a very loving place and also receives very graciously, and can be present in each moment in a joyful way. So, of course, it's not possible to exist like that every moment of every day. But what we do then is start to identify these things that will pull us away from our best self: the guilt, the anger, and the frustration, those kind of things, those mean girls in my head, like I call them. When are you hearing those voices and what are they saying? And then we do some very practical skills about how do you realign with your best self. You can't always convince yourself that you shouldn't feel guilty or talk yourself out of anger, but with more physical practice, like even deep breathing or counting to 10 or walking outside and coming back in, there's things you can do that just reminds you of where you want to be and how do you get back there. Sometimes it takes some journaling or a yoga class if you have the time and flexibility, but having a few practical tools that you can use in a moment to say, oh, I'm off track here. Oh, I can feel myself getting down, being too hard on myself. I'm going to just take some deep breaths and maybe straighten up my posture and remind myself of that best self. Because we're not perfect in our best self, but we have all the resources that we need to go, okay, there may be a problem here that needs solving, but I'm bringing all my resources to it rather than feeling like I'm winging it or that I'm just a knee-jerk reaction maybe with anger or frustration. So managing your feelings like that.
And it's your little compass. My best self is here, and if I start to wander too far that way, I need to get back to here. I like it. It's like your center. People don't realize that's so important. And you function from a more reasonable space instead of reacting. You're more, proactive. I love it. I always know when I'm like, okay, I'm spinning off into Never Never Land. Time to get centered here and get grounded.
Yeah.
Up. I feel like I'm spinning like a leaf in the wind out there. Let's get back to center. So very cool. So you actually published a journal called Just Do You, it supports for this modern motherhood program. What is that like? So I love that. And we can find that on your website too, correct?
Yeah. The Just Do You journal is on the Modern Motherhood site, which is momsjoyfullife.com. They're all linked together, so if you get to any one of my websites, you can get to the other ones. But the journal is the same as I was describing for the pregnancy journal. There's writing prompts about finding your best self. How do you know when you're being your best self? What does it feel like? Really having this, what I call body information, considering what is your body telling you about any situation. Sometimes I would nod and be saying, I'm fine, but actually my chest is tight and my throat is dry and I have a little bit of a tummy ache. Well, that's actually good information because I'm not fine if I'm noticing these things, this information from my body. Another exercise to get more familiar with that is if you're ever faced with making a decision, sit for a minute and say, how does it feel in my body if I make this decision? And if you notice that you feel free and light and excited and your heart races a little bit, then that's good information. Or if you say, what if I stay at this job for 5 more years and make that decision? And you start to go, oh, wow, that feels so heavy and sad to me. Not that that's the only information you use to make your decisions, but it certainly is helpful to realize, like, how does my body respond? Because that's a very true response to any situation. So one of the skills in the journal is getting more familiar with body information and writing out this concept of my best self, and then also really trying to be honest about what are my obstacles, what takes me off center, out of that compass, like you said, and how can I recognize those times and say, oops, I'm just off track here. Not that I'm going to start believing all those stories that I'm a bad person, I'm a bad mom. Just because we're coming up with those thoughts doesn't mean you have to believe that story. And once you get back to your best self, you go, oh, actually, that's not really true. I'm not a bad person. I'm not unlovable. And so the journal has some inspiring writing, some of my blogs, but also some interactive challenges to help you find your own personal solutions to those kind of problems.
I love journals because you do get to go deep and write things down, and you get to go back years from now and go, oh, that challenge, that's not a challenge anymore. I've overcome that. That's the old Carrie. I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah.
I found some from, 8 years ago that I had done, and I loved it because it was self-awareness. It was a little pat on the back, like, you've grown a lot, girl. You've got this. You've come a long way since you were writing in that. You're a whole different person now. So I love the journals. I love writing and reflecting.
Me too.
Those are
Sometimes
awesome.
I find if I'm spiraling out with my thinking, like I'm up at night and I can't kind of resolve a problem, if I just sit down and start scribbling out everything that's in my mind, usually 2 or 3 pages later, I'm like, I can go back to sleep now because that's gone from my head. And I love writing too. It's a good way to kind of purge your thoughts.
Yeah, you're naturally gifted at the writing too. Abby also does public speaking, and you've spoken at schools around you and really supported parents in that realm. And I know you enjoy it too. If anyone's watching this and wants to work with you, is that an option to hire
Yeah,
you for public
absolutely.
speaking? Okay.
Yeah, I love doing public speaking, and I have the Modern Motherhood program. I have a great motivational speaking tour for women and women's groups. So it's not just mothers, but it's women who gather for professional meetings, or it's really a universal message about how to overcome the negative thinking that happens for all of us, and setting goals and really finding a life of balance and joy. And that's so inspiring and something I really love doing. And I've also done, I have a speaking tour for the relationship-based parenting, which is more specific about child development, emotional health, and the quality of relationship. And that's for parents. I've done that in schools and in settings where parents really are coming for a good foundation of information and support. So I love doing the speaking in various capacities, and if anyone was interested in that, I'd be happy to talk about that with them.
Absolutely. And that is a great spot to be in. That's something schools don't necessarily have all the time, is that parenting support, this type anyway. And it's so awesome that you have this platform to work with. I want to talk a little bit more too, just to kind of pull us into your world a little bit deeper. Any success stories you want to share with us, or any sort of certain, this is where you found a parent and this is where you took them. Anything that you want to share with us today about that?
Yeah, actually, my newsletter just came out this morning, and I was writing about a success story with a family I've been working with, and it was a mom who came to me because she felt like her upbringing was a very strict disciplinarian upbringing, and she respects her parents very much, but she felt like she kind of as a child was lost and didn't have the safety and security of somebody that would take care of her and kind of nurture and hold her. And she's always wanted to be that kind of mother. She married a man who also is a strict disciplinarian, and he has very set ideas about the kids need to learn their lessons and know right from wrong. But she had been having this real intuition about, gosh, the discipline that I learned isn't really what I want to do with my kids. That when people's tempers are flaring and you have to get sent away and isolated in another room, or you have to obey or else, that she didn't want to have that kind of relationship with her kids, but she did believe in strong family values and wanted to make sure that her kids learned what was important for both her and her husband. And so she was a perfect client for me because my initial step was I showed her a blog I wrote called The Problems with Punishment, and kind of traditional punishment, how that type of isolation and separation, it actually damages the relationship, and that our relationship is our best teaching tool. And I remember personally, there was a time that I was consistently with my son, he would pick on his sister, and I would say, go to your room, get out of here, I don't want to be around you. And he would walk down the hall, and I remember one time he looked over his shoulder, he was probably 6 years old, and he had such rage and anger on his face that I thought, he's going to his room, but he's more mad at me than he is really learning any lesson right now. And I thought, this is a high price to pay in my relationship with my son in order for me to teach some lesson that I felt like was important. So I related to this mom that I was working with, and we did a 6-week plan where I gave her some podcasts to listen to. We did a one-on-one meeting once a week, and I gave her some very concrete tools about how to respond when her kids are misbehaving, when she needs to redirect them. And the victory for her was that I totally validated her intuition, that the relationship was such a sacred thing for her that she wanted to continue to nurture that, and she wanted her kids to grow up knowing, I can rely on mom, I can go to her when I need her, she's going to be there for me. And so she moved into respectful discipline is what I call it, and it's a program of how do you impart your values, tell your kids what your expectations are, where they've made a mistake, and then kids can actually grow into a place where they know how to make amends. And that's one of the most important aspects of misbehavior, is how do I, as a person and as an adult, when I grow up and I'm in my job or my family, how do I say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, and I want to help make it better. And oftentimes our punishment that just says you're banished or I'm going to hurt you, and just to prove a lesson, doesn't give the kids an opportunity to go back and say, how can I fix my mistake? And so maybe it's an apology, or maybe it's repair something that got broken, or so all of that is one of the most important parts of the respectful discipline process. And you're really teaching kids to have their own internal motivation to be respectful to other people, and it builds trust between you and your child. So the good news is, even when your kids are misbehaving, you can be building the relationship. You can say, this is important to me, this is my expectation of you, and this is what needs to happen, in a way that parent stays calm and regulated. So I'm not just disciplining because I'm so angry, I'm just going to blow my top. And she felt so much better because she had tools she could use, and she didn't have to just wait till she got pushed to that place of being so angry that she would discipline her kids in the way that she learned when she was growing up. So that was an exciting success, and I heard from her recently that there's just so much more peace and harmony in the house, and she feels like her kids are actually misbehaving less now that she's been implementing some of her expectations.
That's awesome. I love that you keep repeating the parenting style of our own parents, because we run into this default, and then we just place blame, like, well, that's how I was raised, or my dad spanked me, so I'm going to spank my kids, that kind of stuff. Or I love that you say that, because I do see where so many people, including myself, you try to swing the pendulum as far away from your parents as possible, and then you end up being too extreme in another area altogether without any rules or regulations, because you're trying to make up for your own childhood,
Right.
without finding balance somewhere. But Shiloh the other day, not too long ago, she said, "Mommy, can I go to dances in middle school?" And I'm like, "Yes, you can," because I didn't get to go. My dad was a very strict Baptist preacher, and dances were, horrible. We weren't allowed to do that. And she's like, I go, "Mommy wasn't able to do that as a child. I didn't get to go to school dances." She's like, "Huh." She goes, "Well, Mommy, we get to choose our own path," is what she said, just so clear. We get to choose our own path, because I do remind her, this was the past. This is how we get to change our future, constantly. And it's nice to hear those little words come out of your daughter's mouth. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing something right. I'm getting coached by my own 10-year-old, but it's good
Yeah.
stuff. But you're right. I don't parent at all like my parents. There's little pieces. I took the good, and left the bad, and things that, kind of left, uncertainty in my own heart and gut, that just wasn't how I was going to parent. So I love that
And
this
one other
is
thing I
so
wanted to
important.
say about what you were saying is you're right that for some people the pendulum swings entirely the other side, and that's what I call permissive parenting. And unfortunately, it's not the best solution to growing up in a really authoritarian parent. Permissive parenting often leaves kind of the kids in charge. If the kids are the only thing that their needs matter, and that I'm not going to take authority over them because I don't want to impede in their creativity, the truth is kids need positive leaders. They need parents to be leaders and somebody they can rely on to keep them safe, to keep them in line so that they know what's acceptable. And so I like to consider relationship-based parenting as that middle ground where you're building a healthy relationship, but you're not the parent who lets your kids walk all over you. I mean, you have your limits and you have your expectations, so that it is the balance where I value our relationship more than anything, and I also will set limits when necessary, and I have high expectations of you. So it's not just loosey-goosey. I won't ever really take authority in the relationship, because I know there's a lot of criticism of that kind of parenting, and I've seen kids that grow up very entitled or self-centered because of more permissive parenting. So I just wanted to make that distinction, that I was using the kind of extremely punishing parent as an example, but there's also this parents that say, "Oh, my kids won't do anything I say. I ask 5 and 6 times for them to do something." And I also see that as a problem. Like, okay, let's talk about you as a leader and how can you be better at kind of demanding respect.
Mm-hmm. I know everyone's so all about the consequences, the consequences. Well, each kid is different, as you know, but my child just really reacts really well with the positive, instead of, and I read a great book a few years ago, How Full Is Your Bucket, or something of that nature, where you're filling with positive, and that's just, extremely, she gravitates toward it. She got a few B's on her report card, and I never even talked about the B's. I talked about the A's and how awesome that was. How cool would it be if they were all A's? And that was all we said. And she changed, the next quarter she got all A's, so it was like a big celebration time. So it's like not focusing, because so many parents want to point out all the bad, thinking that's going to, magically change the bad to good, when
Mm-hmm.
really, that positive part just makes people want to excel more. It feels good. I want to be in that realm again. It's a good feeling. So I love how positive you are in your coaching style. So tell us what's coming up, my dear. I know you got a big year planned ahead, and you've got some other exciting things, and you've been led as an entrepreneur of 12 years. I mean, Abby truly is a leader in her industry. So kind of share and shed a little light on what's to come.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting year. I've started January off enrolling people in just a 6-week program, kind of a short-term solution-focused program, and that runs through January. And so I do a consult with each family to identify the goals they want to set for a short-term program, and then map out a customized program of both the educational podcast and one-on-one support. And then, I've been fascinated. I've started developing so many professional relationships with other people in the field of family services. So anything from serving women in pregnancy to birth or parenting parent coaches have been in contact with me, therapists, people that are working with families. And so I'm excited to be putting together a summit of training for professionals. And there's so many new great fields of child development, child psychology with emotional resiliency. And so I'm putting together some key speakers that can teach on these various aspects of the most current information in the field of family service. So I'm going to start reaching out to more professionals and really supporting them in building successful businesses, serving families with the best information and care so that we can, kind of broaden the scope of the work we're doing to support families. I really believe kind of families are where our society starts. And if we have healthy families, then we'll have healthy communities and we'll build a healthier world.
I agree 100%. And I think people don't realize they just maybe have a family therapist in the area or a psychologist, and that's about all they know, or counselors. I don't think they realize, and I have to always toot the horn for coaches out there because I firmly believe in it, is we're forward thinking. They give you tools to empower you to move forward in a different direction than where you came from, instead of just dwelling on the past over and over and over and over and over again and analyzing that. I don't always think that's the best solution to move forward and shift and change your life. For coaching's forward thinking, and what Abby does is absolutely create tools and give you little systems to try and strategies with your kids, and so you can get to that happy, healthy home. It's so important. It's a must. And if you're a mom out there and you are having those challenges, just imagine your house in peace and harmony. Is it even possible? You probably think some days, what does that even look like?
Right.
Not in this house. That doesn't happen in this house, just on television somewhere.
Right.
Possible. It is possible. Awesome. So remind our audience, Abby, kind of how to get in touch with you. Give them your websites or how they can find you online.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, I'm doing the January special for a 6-week program that includes a free consult. So if you're curious or interested or just want to meet with me, email me at Abby, A-B-B-Y, at relationshipbasedparenting.com. That's all spelled out, one word. And we'll find a time to get on the phone together. I'd love that. You can sign up to receive my weekly newsletter and blog at my website, relationshipbasedparenting.com. And that's an update. Usually includes other programs I'm offering, as well as stories, testimonials about families I'm working with, and if you're interested in more of the pregnancy and doula work that I'm doing, that's abbybordner.com, and I am doing some great childbirth preparation trainings, and developed a program called Yoga Born, which is a yoga-based childbirth program. That's all at abbybordner.com for prenatal and birth services. So I kind of covered the gamut from pregnancy to parenting.
You do, and I love that. That's so awesome. I'm so glad we did this interview because I can think of a gazillion people I need to shove this little link into their inbox today.
Oh,
There's
good.
hope. There's hope.
Yes,
it's okay.
Thank you.
Any final thoughts for our audience before we let you go for the day?
Well, I think the basis of my work is nurturing healthy relationships. So I encourage all of you to express love to the people who matter in your life and make a priority to build those relationships. The quality of our life is really measured by the relationships we have and nurture, and that's what my work is all about. And I just want to send you out after listening to this interview and feel grateful for the people that you love, and let them know how you feel about them.
Absolutely. Life's too short not to do it any other way, right?
Right. Right.
That's right. Make every day happy. A coach of mine had actually said, well, don't write down what you want to do that day. Write down how you want to feel that day. And
Neat.
I want to feel empowered. I want to feel successful. I want to feel love. I want to feel, like the best mom on the planet. I want to feel like a superstar. And then you get to fill in all the fun stuff that helps you feel that way. And that's kind of how my new outlook to life every day. So
I like that. That's a good goal. Yeah, I like that.
It's so much more fun than just checking off a list of to-do tasks.
Right. Right.
A lot more fun. Well, thank you so much, Abby. You've been a blessing to have on today's show, and I'm so excited about the platform that you do and love your work intimately because I think it's super powerful for families across the planet. Parenthood is something we all have in common, for sure.
Yes, thank you, Carrie.
So thank you so much, my dear. Bye, guys.